Welcome back, adventurers, to Let's Play ChäoS Head. In the last episode, all that Takumi Nishijo learned from Ayase Kishimoto, aka Fez, about what she knew about the D-Swords was that only the wielder could obtain, either physically or through other means, a D-Sword of their very own. And absolutely no one else, which is not very helpful for Takumi, but it's all he's got right at the present moment. However, the moment he finally returned to his base, without any interference from Yua or the people that were chasing after him, Takumi learned from Grim about a video that has been circulating on the internet. A video that just happens to capture the very moments of the original New Gen incident, the group diving, which definitely proves that it was a homicide and not a suicide. However, whether or not the cameraman was in fact Shogun and also the New Gen perpetrator altogether also is something that is yet to be truly confirmed at this point. But in any case, this video definitely throws a wrench into the Shibuya Police Department's investigations, and I doubt that Ban would be too happy about this latest development. Naturally, the group diving video became a huge topic of conversation after it started streaming online. The timing is too precise for my liking. This is definitely determined by whoever is actually the New Gen criminal, whether it's Shogun or whether it could very well be a completely different party altogether. As Grim had told me, the internet was going bonkers over it. Of course they would. Many at that channel were convinced that all 4 New Gen homicides had been committed by the same murderer. Again, the result of crowd psychology. Interesting that people would have that theory given the fact that each of the murders is unique enough so not as to give away the serial killer's identity. And so it is rather through the media perception of the New Gen incidents that this prevailing theory of it being committed by the same individual is circulating right about now. Bit of a delay here, but there's also some more headlines on the New Gen wiki site. And I'm not going to read this out. You can all read this out yourselves. Just social media gobbledygook. Some people are, of course, skeptical, but a lot of the others are just using the phrase, whose eyes are those eyes? Continuing a social media trend. Well, it's nice to know that some people are genuinely skeptical, even if that skepticism is few and far between. However, there was nothing fake about the video or the events which transpired in said video. And of course, it's broken out in the main news, which is not surprising. So yeah, no new information from this crowd. The TV reports were getting overheated as well. Like 140 had mentioned, all the big channels except Tokyo TV were broadcasting special new programs, and they aired the aforementioned video over and over. Tokyo TV, of course, having the policy of not interrupting their entertainment shows, even in situations like this. The special programming itself had ended in about an hour, but it was still a minor shock for the country when that video got broadcast nationwide. Although all the stations voluntarily censored themselves, cutting off the last scene where the actual jumping took place, it still had an astoundingly powerful impact. Probably because they didn't cut the audio at the end, my guess would be. The drift of the debate on TV was by and large the same as online, and people seem to have all but decided that the 4 new-gen cases had been committed by the same criminal. Which was natural enough. They'd already discovered common ground between 2 of the new-gen incidents. What about the other 2? The second and third murders? The phrase currently going around Shibuya, whose eyes are those eyes? It had originally made its public debut via the 4th new-gen case, Vampire House, and before that it had been scrawled on the chalkboard or the marker board over at Suimei Academy, and before that it had only existed in the mind of none other than Takumi Nishijo himself. And if the police ever learned about that by digging into Takumi's past, things are only going to get rougher for Takumi here on out. Despite that, one of the victims from the group diving, which took place over a month earlier, had let the same words slip. At present, those words were known to have been used in the first and the last of the 4 new-gen incidents. What that pointed to was, as everyone thought, the possibility that the 4 incidents had been triggered by the same perpetrator. The police held an emergency press conference where they announced their response by stating they would move to identify the uploader with all possible speed. Some politicians were also saying things like, "How greatly regrettable, the criminal must be apprehended as soon as possible." The Mewtwo video was deleted by the site less than 3 hours after it got uploaded, but by then it was too late. Ad channelers had long since finished capturing the video and spreading it around by uploading it here and there and everywhere. No one could stop them. And late at night, the following fact was revealed via a police announcement. Oh dear. That's not good. The video of the group diving incident had been uploaded from the PC in room 37 of a certain manga cafe, which was located in the Shibuya area. Now, it would stand to reason that under normal circumstances, Takumi isn't the only one who uses room 37's PC services over at our cafe. Unfortunately, given the fact that he's a regular there and it just happens to be the one that he always uses, this is definitely another count against him. Looks like we're never going there anytime soon, or probably ever again. Meanwhile, it's another school day at Suimei Academy. Don't know why it froze there. Seated at my desk, I slumped over and hugged myself. Without my realizing it, I had started eavesdropping. Today I was oversensitive to the voices of those around me. Not at all surprised in the slightest. I listened to all kinds of conversations, but no big surprise there. Everyone was talking about the group dive video from yesterday. There were also girls jokingly saying whose eyes are those eyes to each other. In other words, the same kind of noise that Senna had heard in the streets of Shibuya a while back. I bit my lip and studied the surface of my desk. That video was proof, quote unquote. Proof that Shogun existed. Proof that I hadn't killed anyone. Which meant that I didn't have multiple personalities. The old man in the wheelchair was the new gen perpetrator. It was also proof that that video was uploaded from Ad Cafe's room 37, which Yua will certainly use against Takumi. But for what reason could Shogun have deliberately uploaded that video? As a message? Or possibly as a warning? We don't know yet. Why would he do something to him to hint at his identity, when the criminal had previously been swathed in mystery? Why did he showcase all those new gen photos to you in the first chat meeting? When I pondered this, I came up with two conclusions. The first one was that Shogun was the attention-seeking type of criminal. The chances of this seemed pretty high, given how he'd gone out of his way to show himself to me. As for the other possibility, going back on that first point, he hasn't actually. We've only really encountered him at least twice or maybe even 3 times. But that begs the question, what is the other possibility? He was challenging me. For reasons unknown, Shogun, along with his underling Yua, were meddling with me. I didn't know why they felt the need to do so, but they'd almost succeeded in setting me up as the new gen criminal. It was possible that the police continued to suspect me even now, especially with that last bit of information. Shogun was attempting to entrap me.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた。目覚めるんだ。早く。
Yeah, there was also that curious wording there.
出ないと、もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
Thus Shogun had spoken to me when he showed himself before me. I could only think of it as a form of intimidation, the equivalent of, I'm gonna kill you, so don't run away. However, one can actually also take that as, if you run away, more people are going to die. And this time he'd taken the unprecedented action of uploading the video and making sure it was seen throughout Japan. Shogun had undoubtedly moved to the next step of his plan. I've been naive to think maybe he'd stop targeting me, or on the contrary, it would be better to assume he had at last begun to attack and plot against me in earnest, assuming you are the target. There is definitely too many things going on. Some more noise in the background. I was scared. That video had given me the shakes. Despite the fact that Shogun was, physically speaking, under a far worse handicap than me, he had killed 5 high schoolers without lifting a finger. If everything New Gen related had been done by the same person, that meant that Shogun had enacted the brutal pregnant man, staking, and vampire cases with his diminutive body. Or maybe Yua had helped him. Either way, I didn't have any confidence in my ability to protect myself against people capable of carrying out such horrific acts with ease. Not without a D-sword, at least. However, acquiring one might take a little bit of thinking outside the box. If that's even possible. My fear of them, my rage against the unfairness of my being targeted, and the message of whose eyes are those eyes. If I weren't careful, I'd start trembling. To suppress that, I would have to keep myself from relaxing for the time being. I constantly paid close heed to my surroundings and braced myself so I could flee if someone seemed to be approaching. Probably someone like Daisuke and Suimei. I didn't know when Shogun or else Yua might suddenly appear before me. For that matter, I had no guarantee that Yua was the only one working under Shogun. Someone connected to Shogun might be among my classmates now indulging in carefree chatter all around me. I had to do everything in my power to avoid being ambushed, like yesterday at that cafe. If not, I'd get killed next time for sure. I had to get a D-sword fast. Obtaining a D-sword was the only way to break free of my current situation. After listening to Ayase and Senna and actually researching it online, I was all but certain of it. I'd be saved if I got my hands on a D-sword. Would it? I'm still kind of skeptical about that. You might be saved from your immediate predicament, but I doubt that this is going to be over so soon. Yesterday evening I'd been frantically collecting information on D-swords while I kept an eye on the frenzy online, but I didn't meet much success. Indeed. That's to pretty much be expected. I cradled my head, digging my fingers through my greasy hair. How the hell was I supposed to become the owner of a D-sword?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身で。
Come to think of it, Ayase's words seem to be very reminiscent to those of Shogun.
方法なんて私には分からないわ。
Ayase had told me so, but it was too much. It was asking too much to say that without giving me a single hint. I don't think any hint is going to help us in this situation. I think we have to take what we can get. I was becoming more and more impatient. Anxiety threatened to make my chest cave in. Hurry. I had to hurry and find a D-sword. No matter what it took, a D-sword. You've got to find it. Everything will be over if you don't find it. I've got to find it before I become the next new gen victim. But how was I supposed to find one? I didn't know of any good methods. Well, again, if we can't find it the conventional way, we're going to have to try some unconventional thinking in order to acquire one. Some kind of hint. A hint. I have to rush, or I'll lose my chance to find it. Am I capable of finding it? Not under normal circumstances, you're not. This wasn't the time to be doing stuff like coming to school. My life and my ability to graduate. There was no need to weigh them against one another. Yet where was I? Maybe routine. Sensing someone's approach, I raised my head in a flash and recoiled. And it's Suimei, standing there looking equally as surprised.
びっくりした。
Suimei was there, blinking against the suddenness of my movement. I'm the one who was surprised. Don't scare me like that. Released from my tension, I let out a sigh and flopped flat against my desk.
タク、大丈夫？
Does it look like he's okay? As usual, Suimei took a look at my face. Flustered, I lowered my eyes.
顔、真っ青だよ。
It's been a very long night.
汗もすごいし、目も血走っちゃってる。
Was Suimei on my side, or was she my enemy? I think we've ascertained that it's a former. Because she saved me once, my wariness towards her had faded considerably. As for the moment. However, on the other hand, I still hadn't resolved the suspicious points about her. Points that still remain, unfortunately. What had been going on when I saw her covered in blood at the staking? We were supposed to have been friendly classmates since freshman year. Why was she completely missing from my memory?
タク、体調悪いの？
Still, a lot of discrepancies here and there. Suimei tilted her head, looking troubled.
なんでもない。
Takumi trying to brush it all aside. I doubt she's gonna buy that though. But she does seem genuinely concerned. I looked away from Suimei. I couldn't ask her such things to her face. So the day goes on. My nerves were utterly frayed by the time today's classes came to an end, or finally came to an end. Even during class, I'd ceaselessly and warily surveyed my surroundings, paying no attention to the classes themselves. At least nobody came to interview/interrogate anyone during this particular day. I hadn't slept since yesterday, but the sheer tension of it kept me wide awake. School today felt virtually endless, and its excessive length had sent me into a despair time and again. I wondered why one's sense of time could be so drastically affected by one's state of mind. I believe that's time dilation, but I'm not going to explain how that functions. They say that time flows at a fixed and constant rate, but maybe that's a lie. Or maybe it has to do with people observing that time. Your subjective point of view can change the speed of time. In fact, I had a hard time thinking of people's attempts to fix standalone values to period of time like seconds and hours as anything but a plot to cover up the differences in subjectively perceived time, and thus make all of humanity recognize it in the same way. And supposing the length of time changes up based on your suspected subjective perspective, then if you reversed it, wouldn't that mean you could actually control its length at will? That occurred to me because of what Senna had said about controlling the free will of others. I don't think she was talking about time. If you reversed it, huh? Well, luckily we do not have a time leap machine or a phone wave real name TBA to test that particular theory. It's one thing to change the past, it is another thing to reverse it entirely.
ありながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
Senna's words coming back to us. If you could change the picture from a video camera to electrical signals and send it into someone's brain, making them see it as a series of images, then the reverse would be changing that which you envision in your head to electrical signals and sending it to a videotaping device, thereby turning it back into an image. Again, the very same theory that Kurisu Makase utilized when developing the time leap machine. In fact, there was no reason that said recording device needed to be a video camera. No, there isn't. For example, what would happen if you connected them to a hard disk recorder and showed them recordings of a nature program? What if instead of a nature program you showed them an anime? Come to think of it, anime was 2D. It was delusionary. That's the first time you've admitted as such. But since a person who had been blind from birth would never actually have witnessed 3D scenery, if you showed them an anime and said, this is what the world really looks like, wouldn't they come to believe that the 2D world itself was reality? Possibly. That way the person in question would perceive delusions as being reality, wouldn't they? Given the fact that reality itself is just as subjective as time. For example, if person A put their imaginary visions into a hard disk recorder and transformed it into image data, then sent it to person B, wouldn't person A's delusions turn into B's reality? Let's put that theory to the test, shall we? Well, let's try green, going down the green path. Delusions turning into reality. Theoretically, it should be possible. Like that delusion of Fez in a school swimsuit, or maybe even the delusion that is the D-sword. Maybe the D-swords are delusions in and of themselves. Am I some kind of genius? LOL. Sometimes, but not all the time. The magnificence of my idea thrilled me. Perhaps this itself was a way to obtain a D-sword. Hadn't Ayase called her D-sword a delusion? Alright. Time to go home and check it out online. I left the classroom and headed for the school exit without a single sidelong glance. However, I didn't forget my custom of walking along the edge of the hallway while hanging my head and doing everything I could to avoid standing out. Since a little time had passed since the ending bell, most people who went straight home were already gone, though students with club activities or cleaning duty remained behind. Somehow, schools give off a lonely, nostalgic feeling once a day's worth of classes have ended. This is true of both old-fashioned wooden school buildings and newer ones like Suimei Academy. Although to be fair, I'd only been to wood-constructed school buildings in Roger. As I walked through the corridor filled with slanting afternoon light, pondering that sort of useless stuff, I spotted a peculiar figure coming towards me. A girl was tottering along, carrying two huge cardboard boxes. The boxes hid her face from me. She probably couldn't see what was ahead of her either. She couldn't possibly have been more precarious. Who could she have been? I wonder. Probably going to run into her if we're not careful. If I were in a Roje, or in an Roje, the scenario like this would lead me to colliding with her and setting off a flag, guaranteed. I thought about giving it a shot, but it was a mere thought, of course, and I didn't have any intention of actually trying it out. On the contrary, I stayed on my guard. Chances were she was strong that she might be an assassin sent by Shogun. Don't get involved. Watch out. I paid careful attention to every step she took. She still drew closer to me, swaying first to the right, then to the left. I, on the other hand, walked along the left side of the corridor. I waited until she tilted toward the right, then sped up my pace. By doing so, I managed to pass her safely. Hearing something drop, I cast my gaze downward without a second thought. It's a Suimei student memo. Rather elegant looking one, if I do say so myself. Very elaborate design. Someone's student handbook had fallen. Without meaning to, I'd stopped. Doesn't have a name on the cover, but it might have a name inside. Had the cardboard box girl dropped it? I thought as hard about as I contemplated the student handbook. Doubts arose at the back of my head. Why had it fallen now with this timing? It was too obvious, almost as if someone were urging me to pick it up. Well, we could choose not to, but then something tells me that we're going to pick it up anyway, regardless of whether we actually make that choice consciously or not. A trap? I wondered if she dropped it on purpose. The cardboard box girl had used both arms to hold up her boxes. Neither of her hands had been free. If her student handbook had been kept in her skirt pocket, it would have been possible for her to take it out and drop it on purpose. Except it wasn't as if I'd actually seen where the handbook had fallen from in the first place. Maybe the cardboard box girl had been holding it from the start, carrying her cardboard boxes in such a way as to conceal it from me. Nothing was certain. It might not have been deliberate. It would be normal to regard it as a coincidence. But could it be a coincidence? That is the question. I then made my gaze to follow the figure of the cardboard box girl, or tried to. Right at that very instant, the cardboard box girl turned a corner and went out of sight. I'd only seen her from behind for a second. I didn't think she looked familiar. If we actually looked inside the handbook, that might change. I felt like she had short hair. No, but it also seemed long. I couldn't make a decisive statement either way. I hadn't seen her face either. The cardboard boxes had hidden it as we passed one another. All that remained in the hallway were me and the student handbook. Maybe the common sense response would be to pick it up and take it to the faculty room, or chase after the cardboard box girl, but I hesitated to do either. I looked around. I didn't see any other student, or any other students. Nobody else in the corridor but the handbook, it seems. All I heard was a number of girls laughing merrily from somewhere far off. I didn't think it was a trap. The handbook's owner was already gone, and if we actually look inside the handbook, we can see who it belonged to, unless the name is blank, of course. How might this situation end up entrapping me? Could there be a microscopic bomb planted in the handbook? That was far too unrealistic, even for a delusion. So surely nothing would happen if I picked it up here and now. Right, of course, nothing was going to happen. I ought to use it to confirm who that girl was, just in case, because she might be working for Shogun. I take a look at her name, class, and headshot, and leave the handbook itself back here. Of course, if she comes looking for it, she's gonna have a hard time finding it, and if somebody else picks it up and takes off with it, that's gonna make things even harder. I take a pass on shouldering the hassle of having to deliver it to the person in question. After glancing around with even greater caution to make sure no one was in the area, I picked up the student handbook and casually opened it to the first page. Oh dear. There is no photograph. All the details of identification have been completely scrawled out, and the ominous words, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" have been scrawled on the front page. I hastily flung it away. What was that? An unidentifiable eeriness. It didn't so much freak me out as made me feel sick. Malicious and blatant harassment aimed at me as an individual. Who would do such a thing? Especially considering the fact that this was supposed to be the positive route. The girl from before, obviously. Though, since we now don't know who she is, we're not going to be able to track her down. That girl had been affiliated with Shogun after all. Of course she had. Or she could just be a trend chaser of the new gen. I'd only had a glimpse of the student handbook's contents, but the first page, which should have contained the owner's name, birth date, class, and other information, had been utterly blacked out. Furthermore, the headshot photo that ought to have been pasted there had been ripped away. It made me ill. And Takumi is literally about to throw up. I abruptly experienced nausea. I wanted to leave this place sooner rather than later. Covering my mouth, I went toward the stairs. By the time I blindly came out in the courtyard, I couldn't hold my urge to vomit anymore. The instant I dropped to my knees, the contents of my stomach came rushing up backwards. Yeah. This is all definitely too much of a coincidence. Surging stomach acid made the depths of my throat sting. Tears blurred my field of sight. It grew hard to breathe. The aftertaste of bile in my mouth made me feel sick. It seemed like I was closer to the end of my psychological rope than I thought. No kidding. It might also have been because I'd stayed up all night, although the timing of this makes me question otherwise. I looked around ceaselessly as I wiped the edges of my mouth. No one was there. The shadows and blind spots I normally wouldn't have taken notice of seemed dreadful to me now. I began to think that Yua and Shogun were hiding somewhere. Once I made myself believe it, I lost the ability to take a single step away from this place. Somebody save me. How very, very unfortunate for Takumi Nishijo right at this moment. But that is going to be it for this episode of Let's Play ChäoS Head, and when we return, adventurers, can Takumi truly recover from this ordeal, or are things about to get a hell of a lot worse? As always, adventurers, until next we meet.